both very much. Our next conversation, we start exactly on time, is entitled Beautiful Izmir, Narratives of the Port City. And it is a conversation, a trialogue actually, that is going to be held between three very esteemed colleagues from the action. The first one is Fatma Tanis, who is a doctoral candidate at the Faculty of Architecture and the Built Environment in Delft. She is a licensed architect specialized in conservation, and she is registered as a licensed architect with the Chamber of Architects of actually Izmir. She's going to be talking to colleagues from Romania, first of whom is Ramona Mihaila. I hope I pronounced this well. She is the Vice Rector for International Relations and full professor at the Faculty of Foreign Languages and Literatures, and she is also the Director of the Institute for the Social Studies of Gender, Dimitri Cantemir, at the Dimitri Cantemir Christian University in Bucharest, where she teaches undergraduate and graduate courses on literature, women's writing, and gender studies. So following up on the talk we just heard. The third participant in this talk will be Onorina Botezat, who is a director for the Center for Linguistic and Intercultural Research and associate professor at that same university, the Faculty of Foreign Languages and Literatures at Dimitri Cantemir Christian University in Bucharest, Romania. Onorina's main fields of interest and research are imagological and cultural studies and legal terminology. She has written a bilingual dictionary of legal terminology, which I find remarkably interesting. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jorge, for this introduction. And dear Fatma, it's a pleasure having this opportunity to talk to you about how and why we communicate. So I'd like to start with this question. How do you see yourself?
Thanks, Onorina, for your question, and Jorge for the introduction. To start with, I combined my personal interest in literary writing with my interdisciplinary background, and I will open that a little bit, how I see myself within this context. First thing to say, it really was a personal interest, and I didn't attend any literature school for writing, but maybe the education I have been through was instructive and provided clarity in many ways for me to write today. I would like to share some visuals to accompany our talk if it is possible.
That would be great.
Yeah. Is everything okay at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah. Starting from my high school, I was a student in the German section, and curriculum was heavily based on science and math.
Is that your school that we are seeing?
Yes, I'm not so sure if there are many schools with such large woods in their garden. I was privileged to study here, I have to say.
It looks great, and we know that it is widely proven that the green environment impacts our general development, and it links the human mind with the brain and body, and connects the body into these natural and social environments. The processes are said to be reciprocal. The environment shape our brain and mind change body behaviors. Would you mind reflecting on how it has improved your individual well-being while building your interest toward these greener economies?
Yeah, I have just written an article about this school where I call a microcosm and its relation to our development. No doubt, the school together with its natural environment has agency. I would fully agree that green environment was an integral part of our education beyond the curriculum. The school incorporates well with landscape, establishes a historical continuity, acknowledges the cosmopolitan era and builds on this legacy. Successful transformation of this place from the 19th century farm owned by a leading trading family, Giraud family, to a public school in the Republican era established meaningful connections between nature, culture, and history. It displays a great example of how the city should have been modernized. Maybe this is why I was too much concerned about the development of Izmir, particularly in the modern era. My PhD began to be seeded while I was studying in this high school. But it was complemented with the follow-up education, of course. Following high school, I studied in the earliest established architecture school of Turkey. We were trained fundamentally by the knowledge of master builders. This tacit knowledge was bounced at the school, creating a special architecture education that forbids us largely from reading and writing on architecture with words. Lecturers repeatedly told us the tool of the architect is the pen or pencil, but not for the words, for drawing. So this sort of education was constructed for me in a different way. Architecture is a language, if you will.
I would like to add here that actually what you have been taught is quite similar to the main tool of any discourse maker, or should we say writer. So it would be fair to say that there are cases when we communicate some things that might be interpreted slightly differently from their encoded message, depending on the decoding environment. What do you think about it?
And no doubt, this path constructed my cognitive world, and I'm becoming more and more aware of that. Yeah.
So when or how did you discover that you actually can use your pen to draw words?
There was one particular moment that I can share with you. I arrived in this world in this very place, actually. It's a beautiful beach, but some people wish to touch this beauty with building activities. And there was a resistance against this attempt in the late 2014, sorry. I was in Hamburg when this event happened, and I found myself writing my childhood memories. I was strongly against the architecture competition, and as an architect, I find that not building is also a very powerful attitude. That was when I recognized that I like writing, and I got some signals that I can use my pen for the words as well.
Wow, it's a wonderful picture, and looking at this, I cannot think of anything else but the myth of the motherhood rooted in the images of different kinds of waters, oceans, seas, from, of course, my point of view from literary studies. And there are so many writers who used this image to describe motherhood as the birth of the world, of a new life, of protection, the maternal figure, so to say. Do you think you had this protective approach?
Exactly. And I think I am overprotective. For my beloved ones, also anything that I really like to protect. Looking back at the text today, I recognize that subconsciously, my text established links between society, nature, and cultures through memories, while building on and contributing to the collective memory to protect this place.
Collective memory is another term that links to my field of study. My main research focus is related to images of foreigners and stereotypes, and I came to this conclusion that the collective memory has a central place in one's person's education. So dealing mainly with languages and literatures, from my perspective, the collective memory is built on common knowledge, proverbs, sayings, literary works, even films. What is the visual part of it from where you stand?
I think painting the physical environment with words in readers' minds is the visual part. Making visible the invisible that possibly got lost in the entangled social, cultural, spatial, and natural environment to raise awareness is my main concern. So if the picture is more or less clear for everyone, and if readers could relate to that picture, and if that they can find any piece from their memories in my writings, then I feel like we have the common ground.
So you are also a content creator. If we were to put in our today's conversation context, to advocate for a cause, in order to advocate for this cause, do you choose a channel of communication, or it simply grew up from there? Looking back today, do you think it was efficient?
I think it grew from there because this was just a Facebook post. And I think it was efficient. When I wrote this text, it was circulated largely in the local context, and it was published in a newspaper, and someone read it out loud during the time of resistance. So this is the time when I recognized the power of words, power of narratives for creating a common and inclusive ground and acting upon a problem. So this same problem happened again last year, and people shared my text again. So I think it was efficient, I can say.
You see, communicating is vital. So when one is engaged and uses his or her voice to advocate for a cause from a professional point of view, it really makes a difference. So here we have one answer for our today's seminar: why? To play one's part, to use one's knowledge in order to shift things into the right direction.
Yeah, no doubt. And another point that I wish to add, sorry, give me 1 second to move my body. I'm coming. Okay, the lights are back. I'm sorry. Yeah, another point is about the educative nature of the narratives. Last year, before the lockdown, I was in Yapbak, a study center in Het Nieuw Institute, Rotterdam, during a debate led by our very good colleague, Dick van den Heuvel. A participant said, "Information goes to mind, but stories goes to heart." Anyone could forget what they learned in a 40-minute long lecture, but everyone would remember most of the details in a 2-hour-long film. Narratives could be very instructive. So for that reason, I wish to use my own resources, including my interest complemented with education and emotions, to write narratives. Until writing my PhD, I followed convoluted yet interconnected trajectories in my life. I completed 2 bachelor's, 2 master's programs. I traveled to, lived, studied, and worked in Turkey, several European countries, Brazil, and Australia. My PhD process was timely to open up my private museum. And this inner resource and passion have been of great importance for me to find my voice as a scholar. Also, writing in this particular way entertains myself intellectually while pouring my emotions out and turning them into production to improve society.
You see that there is already a pattern there. You have chosen an image to accompany your quote that resembles a great deal with the garden from your school. And this is probably the best example of how space impacts our development.
Yes, indeed. This image is coming from my school. That's true. And I hope that development is visible in my doctoral research, because my PhD starts from an observation while I was a student in Izmir. Let me share with you which image is that. This image was a part of my everyday life during my high school years. Each time while I was passing through this building right next to the container port, Sean Morgan and Amy Lee were singing in my head the song Broken. So this is the Electric Factory. Seeing it like this always made me sad and made me think, is it the broken glasses hurting my heart, or is it the history falling down in pieces? This image is the key picture for myself to start my doctoral research. I felt like something was wrong in this city. And the more I became acquainted with city's history, the more I became concerned about the urban matters.
So I really feel that the city talks to you and you hear it.
We can put it that way, I think. And another image during my research actually made me more upset. So complemented with the knowledge, of course. My studies and travels in port cities clinched my understanding that there really was something wrong in the city. And these wrong things were not limited to Izmir. It was a common fate of port cities, I understood over time. So Izmir is a great case to work with in that sense. I did more research to understand how we arrived at this image. You would remember my previous presentation. This was the face of the waterfront before the war and the Great Fire in 1922. Anyone who has a little bit of knowledge about this city would say the reason was the fire, which has wiped this beauty from the city out. And this photo is after 1922. Apart from the street named after Atatürk, the founder of the Republic, and the photographer Cemal's signature in Turkish, written in Latin alphabet, to be more precise about the date of the picture, the first palm trees were planted in 1932, July 28. But this is after that. At some point, the fire became a sort of a scapegoat to blame everything on it. Real actants behind the changing face and the fate of the city were quite overlooked. And this is another angle. So who was responsible for the transformation of the city in this way? Decision makers, no doubt, who allowed the destruction of the beautiful Izmir, and policymakers who secured this destruction under the law. I also understand the motivation and weaknesses behind this sort of development in the city. The city is understood in the local context as the final stop of internal migration. Sea was at the end of the journey, but in fact, Izmir has always been a part of larger journeys. It's a part of a larger chain of networks, not only for trade, but also for shared cultural networks. So I can go on and go on this topic, but for those who would like to hear more about it, I will be talking for this specific topic in the forthcoming EAHN conference. So if you are interested, you are more than welcome to join in. If I have covered where I see myself in this communication, I would like to continue how we communicate and why.
That would be great. We've heard today so many times that we choose different channels of communication according to our target audience. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, true. Different channels, different audience, as I could say. My primary audience has been Izmir's inhabitants and descendants of Levantines, my high school friends, an architecture school in Izmir, where I submitted my article about the high school, and the mayor, Tunç Soyer. I think I chose my channel for communication as the media is writing in different forms of publication for now. So my dissertation, which hopefully will be an open access book, and articles, also learning from my hometown case, I hope these writings will find their own audience themselves. So also now these recorded presentations are very important channel. Another thing about the communication, to be able to communicate, it is also important for participants in the communication to speak the same language. So it is timely for me to develop my project because there is a mayor who understands Izmir as a whole. He has developed his understanding being in the exact position of 19th century traders and travelers, being in between Europe and Turkey. He looked at Izmir through various perspectives. He studied in Switzerland for foreign affairs and international relations, completed his second master's degree in the field of European Union. And it should come as no surprise that the mayor is an alumnus of my high school. So the mayor pays attention to the cosmopolitan era of the city, which I presented in the previous webinar. And he is aware of that. Citizens need to establish emotional connections with their cities. Izmir with love is his slogan. And there are two important things that I wish to underline. First, cities are essentially interconnected with one another at the level of emotion, and they are specific cities with their shared cultures. In my doctoral research, I wrote narratives to establish a better understanding of a particular city, and also share this knowledge with various target groups to have the same picture in our mind. So this is why narratives are great tools. And second, maybe more importantly, I wrote narratives as a way of understanding the cosmopolitan mode of thinking. This mode of thinking exists in the elite traders of the 19th century. It exists in travelers, and it exists in the present day mayor. To achieve my goals, I departed actually from the narratives of the city. As I presented in my previous presentation, I departed from the city's own immaterial resource because simply it was there. Beautiful Izmir. This city is known as beautiful Smyrna, Güzel İzmir in Turkish, which is a historical construction. And this is the most recent image of the city, one of the most recent images. It is hard to call this city beautiful, but everyone who lives in the city argues that it's beautiful. How so? Now it's beautiful. If you look at the square, the sunset is beautiful. The waterfront, looking at the 19th century custom building and the sea is beautiful. Sitting along the waterfront, enjoying nice weather, having chats with friends and family is beautiful. Life is beautiful in Izmir, and Izmir is beautiful indeed. If you do not look at the city, words are powerful, in so much that they build a very strong understanding of our cities over centuries, reflecting lifestyles and giving a hint on everyday life. They build a city more than building materials do. Beautiful Izmir, Güzel İzmir. So I reproduce the core city from its own resources. My particular interest was on producing new narratives from the city's own narratives, immaterial and shared resources of the city. My approach could easily mirror also producing the city in the material sense by focusing on the material resources of the city. Now I think you have more complete picture of why I write these narratives and my own motivation. So on that very long note, I would like to hear your thoughts about my work. How do you reflect on my previous presentation within this context and the communication?
Well, I enjoyed it very much and felt an immediate connection, seeing those beautiful images and postcards of Izmir you showed us, the stories and travelers and writers. And there are 2 or 3 great poets in Romania that were depicted in various novels and short stories. So they gained that label of beautiful and cosmopolitan cities, and they were. And likewise, your story about Izmir, they developed into very different cities nowadays. And, you know, having benefited from a stereotype of a wonderful place, people would come to visit and would be kind of disappointed not finding those images. And in this case, through the lens of that collective memory that you talked about, I would say that the narrative along with the visuals contribute to the image creation. So it was like a therapy, you know, like, look, this is happening in other places as well. And Karima Ben Salah was talking this morning about Brussels reshaping and reorganizing in order to accommodate EU institutions. So this is kind of a pattern, I would say, and that we share.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your reflection and also reconfirming my approach. And it's very nice to hear that this whole process is indeed very similar and shared fate of the port cities. And there are common emotions, and I think this is very, very beautiful. Yeah.
I think our time is up. So thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. And Jorge, thank you for organizing this.
No,
we really enjoyed the time preparing this, and it is nice to have some real informal chat from time to time.
Well, first of all, it shows that you prepared this well, for which I want to thank you very much. It is a beautiful conversation about a beautiful topic. So beauty squared is always a great thing. Certainly, we will have the opportunity to talk a little bit further towards the end of the program. For the time being, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate this conversation. Very, very illuminating in many ways. And at this moment, we can go and have lunch, hopefully, to fill batteries for second part of the program, where we will start with a very interesting, very important guest. Thank you all very much. We meet back at 1 sharp, and well, good to go and have lunch on this note.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah.